In the holy month of Ramadan, let's build up a search app for the Quran, which is our holy book for the Muslims, using Angular version 13 and Tailwind CSS version 3. It will be something like this. So we enter our search keyword in the search bar, and when we click on search, it will return a list of verses that match the given keyword in the form of cards. Hey everyone, I am Zoeb Khan and welcome back to my channel. Tailwind CSS is the hottest new utility-first CSS frameworks. With Angular 13, Tailwind CSS 3 is now fully supported. So I thought it would be a good idea to see how to make a simple but useful search app using the combination of both. So let's get started. Great, so first we are going to create an Angular 13 project, and I've already done that here. Then we need to add Tailwind CSS to it, and we have an official guide on the Tailwind CSS page to install version 3 here. I'm not going to go into it in much detail here because it's pretty self-explanatory and you just need to go step by step here, and I've already gone through it here. So I already have my Tailwind CSS config file here. Great. So next we are going to just start with our app, and we're going to add our modules. So the first module we're going to add is our forms module. We need it for our input field. And the second module that we need is HTTP client module. This we get from Angular common. Great. So we have our modules ready. Now let's start building our UI. We're going to go in our app component, and the first thing we'll do is to create a basic div, which will be the container for our app. And we're going to give some styles here. We're going to give the whole screen height, and we're going to get the width as screen as well, and we're going to give it a slight blue color of 100. Let's serve this and see how it looks. Great, we have it just like we want. Now let's add a div within it, which will be our header. So we're going to create a div here, and the first thing we'll do for this is to give it a custom height of 200 pixels. So we're going to use the custom class function for Tailwind CSS, and we're going to give it a height of 200 pixels. Okay, and of course a width of full so that it extends, and then we're going to just give it a background here just to check whether it's working fine. Okay, great. Yes, so this is our header. So the next thing that we need to do is to give a background image which is of the Quran, which is from Unsplash. For that as well, we are going to use the custom attribute function for Tailwind. We're going to give it a URL, and the URL will be something like this, which I already have here. It's from Unsplash, and let's test this out. Okay, so we get an image here, but we need to make it cover this area instead of use its original height. So we're going to use BG cover here. Okay, great. And we also want to center it a bit so that it is centered in this area. Great, I think this looks really good. The next thing we need to add is to add our title within it. Okay, and the title will be an H1. Let's give it the text of search the Quran, and let's see how it looks. Okay, obviously it doesn't look that good now. We need to give it a text of 4XL, increase its size, and we need to make it white. Okay, then obviously we need to add some margins. So we're going to give a top margin of 8 and also a bottom of 8. Okay, so we're also going to give 5 padding at the top so that we can have some spacing, and we're going to make it text center because we want to make it to center. Okay, so I think it's positioned fine now. The next thing that we will do is to add our input here. So this would be an input field, and the type would be text. And we're going to add a placeholder here and say enter your keywords. Let's see how this looks. Okay, so it's very it doesn't appear very good here. So in Tailwind we can use a forms plugin. So we're going to install that forms plugin now, and let's open up another this here, and we're going to do npm install -d at Tailwind CSS -forms, the forms plugin. Now the forms plugin adds some default styles to our form elements so that it's easy to add our own classes. Okay, and next we'll also add the plugin here. So we're going to copy this here, and this should work fine now. Okay, so yes, you can see that it has some default styles already applied here. But we need to make it better. So if you go on the Tailwind forms plugin documentation, you can see that it has various options. This is the unstyled one which we have currently, but we need to have this one. This looks really nice, and so to do this we can just go in our developer console and copy the classes. So I've already done that, and I already have a set of classes here with me which I want to use here. So I'm just going to copy it in and use it in our classes here. Okay, and let's see how it looks. Great, it looks great. And okay, yes, so the text is gray and there are some ring highlights here. Okay, now next we need to add our button here. So but before that we need to convert this whole container here into a flex row, because we want it to be in a row. So we're going to put our input inside of it, and we're going to also put our button inside of it as well. The button will be having the text as the search, and we'll style it with a background blue of 800. We're going to give it a padding Y of 2 and a padding X of 4. We're going to give it a shadow. We're going to make it semi bold, and we're going to make the text as white. Let's see how this looks. Okay, this looks good. I think it also needs a rounded, similar to the other one, so rounded MD. Okay, yeah, so this looks really good. Now there's need to be a space here, so we're going to give a slight margin to the right to the input. Great. Yeah, so we should instead of giving this text center, we can give the top level class as text center as well, so that to center everything in it in the center. Okay, great. So I think our header is complete now. At least it's visually complete. So now before moving further, the next thing that we're going to look at is to set up our API for this. Let's set up our API so that we can test whether we are getting the right responses. So we're going to add a service called search service. We're going to do ng generate services, search service. Okay, S. Great. And for the API call, we'll use an open API which is available on this link here. This has different endpoints for different purposes. In our case, we'll use the search one. So if we can copy this here, we can see that if we, for example, copy it here, and we will change the edition here because we need this translation, and I like this one. And the keyword here is Abraham being used. So now let's try and see what we get. So we're getting a JSON object here. Let's copy it in JSON viewer to see how it looks and format it. So as you can see, now we get the JSON object here, and we get a data object as part of the response, which has a count and it has a list of matches for that keyword. So we get a basic structure for our data here, and we can use this structure to set up our TypeScript interfaces. So let's use this format and add a search result model file here. We're going to add a model folder here, models, and a file called search result.model.ts. And we already have some interfaces that I have made out of him. Now remember that this is not strictly needed here, but I want to do this because it brings some consistency in our code, and we'll most probably extend this app to be more complex than it is here. So that would be really helpful if we have our model set up before that. Okay, so these are our interfaces, and as you can see, this is the search result which represents the data here. So let's go in our service now. We're going to go in our search service. First we're going to include our HTTP client here. Great. And we're going to create a function search. This function is going to take in our keywords, okay, and it's going to give back an observable of search result which we just defined. Okay, what would be the URL here? So the URL here would be this, the API call that we just decided here. Okay, and let's give it in form of a string literal here. So this is all fine, except for we need to change Abraham here to use the keywords. Okay, so this is our URL, and we're just going to return http.get. We'll get an any form at this point, and then we are going to pipe into it and map and give the response as response.data. Include this in. Okay, yeah, so our API is all set up. Now let's go in our app component and make sure that all of the missing pieces are present before we make the call. So let's go in our app.component.ts, and the first thing here we are going to do is to create a keywords variable. Now this would be a string, and we're going to give it an empty at first. Then we're going to give a results variable here. Now this would be search result, or it could be undefined for when we don't have any result, or when it's set up initially. Great. The next thing that we're going to do is to set up our search method here. This will be called whenever we click on the search button or press enter here. So before we set that up, let's go in our app component.html and add up some code here. So we're going to use the ng model directive here and give keywords here so that we can have two-way binding, and then we are going to add a click event handler on this button, which is going to call search. Also, we also want to use the key down dot enter here, and we're going to search just like we did on that. Okay, great. So now let's just go back and fill in the missing piece of the search. So before that, we also need to include our search service because we want to use it. So we will include our private search service here. Okay, and before we call our search service, we are going to first make our results as undefined so that it shows empty. Then we are going to call our search service dot search, and we will give in the keywords, and we will make it to lowercase in case that the person makes some, or the user makes some error in entering the case, and then we're going to just subscribe to it. We're going to get the result back, and we can just assign it to our results variable. Okay, so this is pretty much it for the basic setting it up and how to test whether it shows up or not. So we are going to just give a small div here, and we will enter our results variable here, and we're going to convert it into a JSON to see how it looks. Okay, so let's test this API out now, and let's try entering some variable here. So yes, we can get our whole JSON here as expected. So our API works really well now. Next, what we need to do is we need to work on our search results, the list UI. Now to do that, to prevent us calling it again and again, we will hard code the data here for the time being. Okay, so we have already some dummy data here, and we will use that for the time being so that we can just style our result card. So here is our data, and if you can see, it won't show at this point, but once we start building it up, we are going to see this data. Okay, so let's build up the results card now. So we are going to add a div here, which will be a containing div, and we are going to not a class, but we are going to check for the results variable. So we don't want to show this if the results are undefined. This class we are going to add something later. Okay, then within it we are going to add another div, and this would be the div that contains one card. So we're going to use an ng for here, and we're going to do match of results dot matches. Okay, and within it let's put in a paragraph, and we're going to write here match dot text. Okay, so the text that matches. Okay, we need to do let as well. Okay, so now if you see this, we can see that our text is just dumped onto the screen and there's no styling for it. Okay, now let's add some styles to it. So we're going to add classes initially. We are going to add some padding. Okay, this looks better. We're going to make our cards rounded, 2XL in fact. It doesn't show anything because we don't have a background, so we're going to add a background of 200, which would be a bit more than which we already have. Okay, yes, so this looks better, but we also need to add a margin so that our card is a bit separate from the outlines, and we'll also add a bit of shadow, not a bit actually, shadow XL. That would look good. Okay, good, that this looks good. So this is for the result card. Now let's fill in the rest of the details inside of it. So for the first paragraph, you're going to make it text base, okay, and we're going to give it text gray of 700, so that it's a bit different from the other text. And then below that, we want to have show our match.sura. Okay, let's open up our model here so we can see what we have here, and we can just put it in. So match.sura dot number, and we're going to say sura this, okay, or rather we're not going to give the sura number, we're just going to give the sura dot English name, okay, and match.sura dot English name translation. We're going to give it in our brackets, okay. And the second thing we will do is we are going to give an ayah, which is the verse number. So the ayah number is match dot number in surah, okay. Let's test this out whether it's correct or not. Great, so now we're getting the text here as well. So but what we need to do is we need to add some styling to it. So we are going to add the same text base, but the difference is that we're going to make it semi bold, okay. Yeah, so this looks good because it distinguishes the surah name and everything from the text. Okay, so our card looks good, and let's also add a results header at the top here. So we can have a header at the top which tells the user how many results have been returned. So inside of it, we're going to write found results.count ayat for your keyword, okay. And we're going to give styling. The styling would be very similar to what we have here. The only difference would be that we want to make it a bit more pronounced in terms of colors. So we're going to make it 400 blue, and we are going to give the font as semi bold as well. Okay, let's try this out. Great, so it says here I found 75 ayat for your keyword. Okay, now you'll notice here that we have our scroll here, and it sort of scrolls the whole thing, including the header. Now we don't want that. We want the scroll to be inside of this, so it only scrolls the results and the header stays the same. So to do that, we're going to add a custom class here, which will be the first time we're adding our own CSS, and that's the beauty of Tailwind. We're going to call it results, and we're going to go in our CSS here, and we're going to add our own results here, and we're going to give it a fixed height of 100 VH minus the header, which is 200 pixels, okay, and an overflow of auto. Great, now our header is fixed and we can scroll within our results, and let's try searching. Okay, so we also need to remove our hard coding here. So we will remove our hard coding here that we did for building our UI, and we're just going to leave it as it is. Okay, now let's try all of our app out and let's see how it looks. So we're going to put in paradise here first, and you can see that we get about 75 ayats related to paradise. This is the first one, and we have the rest of them, and we're going to add maybe blessings as well. We can found 5 ayats for blessing, and this looks good. Okay, and the inner scroll works as well. Okay, so at this point we are almost complete with our Quran search app. One thing missing here is that there is no loader here. So when we click search and there's a long search, so for example we have paradise again, we can see that it takes a bit of while and the user doesn't know what's happening. So we need to add some icon or something, a loader, so that we can notify the user that something is loading. So we're going to add our material icons to the app now. To do that, we'll first add a link in our index.html so that we can include our material icons here. Okay. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to go in our app.component.html, or in fact before that, let's just add a new variable here. Let's call it loading. This would be a boolean. This would represent whether we are loading or not. This is going to be, initially it's going to be true when we call our service, but when we get the result back, it's going to be false. And in our app.html or in our template, we're going to add a div just above the results. Let's make it centered and also give it some padding, and let's link it up with our loading variable, and inside of it we'll add a span here, which would be material icon, and the identifier or the icon we want to use is refresh. Okay, let's test this out. So to test this out, let's first make this true for some time to see how it looks. Okay, so it looks a bit small. I want to increase it to a bit more, so we're going to just give the text as 4XL. Okay, let's see how this looks. Okay, yes, this looks better. And we'll also use an animate class in Tailwind to spin it. Great, so this loading looks nice. And now let's link it back up with our loading variable. Great, now let's test this out again, and we will use paradise because it takes a bit of time. Great, we get a loader and then we get our results back. We can search for some other thing as well, so we can search for hell. Okay, we get 113 verses for that as well. Okay, now let's test out just one small thing again. So if you, for example, give an unknown word or a word which is not found in the Quran anywhere, what happens in that case? So as you can see, our loader keeps loading, and what happens here we don't actually know. So let's just go in our developer console and see. So you can see that we have got an error here. It says I cannot read properties of null. It is reading data. So I think this is in our search service, and let's see what's happening here. So if we go in our search service here, we can see that we are mapping our response to data. Now apparently data is not present there when there is no results, when there are no results returned from the Quran here, from this API at least. So what we need to do here is that we need to add some check here, and let's add a check here of if res.data. Okay, so we're going to return data, res.data, else we'll just return it in the same format, but we're going to give the count as 0 and the matches as an empty array. Great, so let's try this out again, and if you're going to write gibberish here again. Okay, so it's not only about res.data, we don't even get a response here, so we're going to check for response in that case. Okay, great, so it found 0 IR for your keyword. Now every API has some different rules for its consumption. So in this case the API seems to return nothing or an empty response when there is no actually result from the search API. So we are just using that to our best advantage. Great, so we have completed a basic search app with Angular 13 and TailwindCSS version 3. Of course, we can make it even better by adding more features, and I'll hopefully be covering it more in my future videos. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for further such videos. Thanks for watching.